Hi guys, welcome to Pathology in a Nutshell. My name is Dr. Ben, and this afternoon we are going to be looking at an overview of cell adaptations and cell injury. As we all know, every organism is made up of cells. Cells make up tissues, tissues make up organs, organs make up systems, and then these systems make up the entire organism. And so, when a disease manifests clinically, it actually began at the cellular level. The disease is an evidence that there is cellular injury going on. Okay, and so cells will respond to noxious and even physiologic stimulus by first attempting to adapt. Okay, so when there is a stimulus, whether physiologic or noxious, the first thing the cell tries to do is to adapt to that stimulus so that it can continue to function normally. And so an adaptation is simply either a structural or a functional change in the cell in which a new but an altered steady state is achieved so that the cell can continue to function normally. It is when adaptation fails or when the limit of the cell's capacity to adapt is exceeded that we say that a cell is injured. And this injury can either be reversible or irreversible injury. In reversible injury, the cell has incurred injury, but with the removal of the stimulus, the cell can go back to its normal state. In an irreversible injury, the cell has incurred injury, but that injury cannot be healed, sort of. The cell cannot go back to its normal state because of the intensity of the injury, and so it will progress to either of the different forms of cell death that we have. Okay, and there are different ways a cell can adapt. A cell can adapt either by increasing in size, which is what we call hypertrophy, or the cell can multiply and increase in number, which is what we call hyperplasia. Cells can even change their phenotype from one form to another, one adult form to another, and this kind of adaptation is what we call metaplasia. A cell can either shrink, that's reduce in size, or even reduce, or cells can reduce in number as a result of the kind of stimulus that they are exposed to, and that kind of adaptation is called atrophy. And this is just an overview of what we have talked about, a graphical representation of what we have just said. Okay, so a normal cell, when it is exposed to a stimulus, will first attempt to adapt, and this adaptation can be hypertrophy, hyperplasia, metaplasia, or atrophy. And if the stimulus is removed, the cell will go back to its normal state. However, if the stimulus persists and it is noxious, it can progress to reversible injury. And this reversible injury can, if the stimulus is removed, can go back to its normal state. But if the stimulus is not removed, reversible injury can progress to irreversible injury, which will now progress to cell death, and that can happen either through apoptosis or necrosis. Of course, there are other forms of cell death, but we will stick to these two for now. Sometimes the stimulus is so intense, the intensity of the stimulus may be so marked, or the extent, the duration of exposure of the stimulus may be so significant that the cell may not have the time to adapt, and it will go directly to injury, to reversible injury. And if that stimulus is removed, of course, the cell will come back to its normal state. Sometimes the cell may not even necessarily be reversibly injured. It can move from being a normal cell depending on the intensity of the stimulus, and depending also on the duration of exposure to the stimulus. The cell can move directly straight to irreversible injury, from which the cell will die. Now, this is just an overview of cell adaptations and cell injury. In our next video, we'll look at the different forms of cell adaptations and the different situations in which they can be found. I believe you enjoyed this video. Please, if you did, subscribe, like, and press the bell button. and you can also share so that others can benefit. See you in the next one. Thank you.